Hola y buenas tardes to everybody who is tuning in. My name is Jessica Padron. I am your dutiful host on the Latinos Unidos Spanglish podcast. Today, I am very grateful because we have two badass guests. Folks, I'm very excited to speak to today. So voy a empezar introduciendo a los bienvenidos hoy. So tengo a Serafín Calvo. Del 702 Kickback y que es miembro de nuestra comunidad que ha trabajado en el gobierno municipal por más de 28 años. También tengo a mi buen amigo Rob Ponte, que desafortunadamente no habla mucho español, pero es un latino orgulloso y un buen amigo mío que hace mucho en la comunidad con un nuevo proyecto que se llama Crestwood Tree Project. So, con eso voy a empezar la conversación con estos hombrerones, and we're going to get started. So, Sera, I'm really excited to have you on. We just recently met, but I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to hop on and have you on. Can you tell the folks a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I've never been introduced as a badass guest, so thank you. Como dijo Jessica, mi nombre es Serafín. Friends and family call me Sera because they couldn't pronounce Serafín, so half of Serafín is Sera. Like you said, I've been working in municipal government for over 28 years. I've moved to Vegas since 1975 with my family. Our family migrated from Mexico, from Tijuana to be exact. And we grew up here, one of 9 brothers and sisters, 6 boys. And we grew up on the east side, went to school, worked, and as of recent, my wife and I purchased a home in the same neighborhood where we grew up, so we came back to the community, and we're really excited to be back.
That's beautiful. That's really nice. I'm glad to hear that. And I look forward to getting into more detail as our conversation flows. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to my homie, Rob. Rob, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're currently up to in the community or your background coming up here in Vegas?
Sure. Yeah. So I've lived in Las Vegas for about probably like 12 years now. So I've been here a little while. Originally, I'm from LA. I grew up in Baldwin Park, California. And my family moved to Reno when I was like 9. And then I lived in San Diego for a couple of years. And then I moved here. So I've been here a little bit. So right now, I've been working on this project called the Crestwood Trees Project. And it's just basically an effort to plant some greens, some trees in our neighborhood, which has a lack of trees. Even though it's such an old neighborhood, we do have a lot of old trees out there. We're just kind of trying to revitalize the neighborhood and make it so that kids, families, and people can come out on the street and really enjoy kind of public space in Las Vegas, which I think we are lacking, especially near people's homes. So that's what we're trying to do. But I love living in Las Vegas. I live in the Crestwood neighborhood, which is near downtown, kind of near the Huntridge district neighborhood down there. So I've lived in downtown most of the time that I've been in Las Vegas, and I really love the community and everything about it.
Yeah, and he's serious about that, folks. We're lucky to even have him on the show because he refuses to leave the downtown area unless absolutely possible.
If I can't bike there, it's usually not worth going. I'm like, do I really need to go somewhere that I can't bike over there? Yeah.
Live, work, and play, right?
Hey.
Yeah, exactly. That was the motto.
But that's why I'm glad to have you both on because I think what you both do in different respects kind of plays off of one another because when you beautify your community, you better your community. And particularly in the east side, we see disproportionate rates of pollution. I one of my friends, Rudy, who's involved with Chispa here in Nevada, which is an organization that's about the environment, specifically communicating and spreading these messages and information to Latinos. They had a campaign a while back about, how children in the east side are far more likely to suffer from asthma. Because of all that pollution. And I mean, living on the east side, we see more potholes, we see all these issues. So I think working in state and local government is really the way, and holding those people accountable is really the way to make this change. So Sera, can you tell us a little bit more, what made you want to get involved in local government and maybe any tips you have for folks who want to reach out or start to get involved?
So, yeah, of course. So originally, getting involved in local government was it was a job, right? So, it paid the bills. I was fortunate enough to start working for the city at a very young age. You want the stability, the retirement, everything. But as the years progressed and I matured, I realized how local government works, how budgets work, how different departments have different functions. And one of the things I realize is that as I get older and mature in my profession is that not everybody knows how to access these services that the city provides, right?
Preach.
It's not like we're asking the city to do us a favor. Can you please do us a favor? No, that's what they do. They're there for those things, specifically what you just mentioned, potholes, beautification in older communities, right? There isn't enough information getting to the right people. There's a lack or a gap of information. And if we only knew how to access those services, we would be able to beautify our neighborhoods and our communities a little bit more. One of the things I've found is that, all my life I heard people that came from other countries to work, immigrant families, they were going to be here, work, make their money, and then go back, right? That was the original plan, but they end up staying here. So it's generation after generation with the same mentality that someday I'm going to go back, and you never do. So there's never really any roots that are kind of set. And I'm not saying this for everyone, but like the older generations, so they never really set any roots. You think someday you're going to go back. This isn't my home. I'm renting or whatever. So the mentality of beautifying your community, your street, your front yard is not really a concept, right? And I think sometimes it just takes a little example like what you guys are doing. Take a little pride in the community. Take a little pride on your street, on your block. And it just takes a couple people kind of setting the example, setting the pace, and things change.
Right.
It's something as simple as that. So the reason why I get involved and I got involved and I'm really passionate about the community is because a lot of times we just don't know. Our community just doesn't know how to access services, how to go about getting something taken care of, like a pothole.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And a lot of folks, honestly, just with government stuff in general, or in the Latino community in particular, we're afraid. It's those immigrants like, cállate la boca, trabaja duro, y vas a luchar, y suceder. You shut up, you work hard, and then you succeed.
Yeah.
And if you're complaining all the time, you're never. So in some ways, it kind of breeds that fear too. And especially with kind of the political environment and stuff we've been in the last few years, a lot of folks just don't want to speak up, or they're afraid to make that investment in their community or demand more. You also touched on something very important. So I think cultural competency is something to bring up here, right? Because not all Latinos speak Spanish, but they're still proud Latinos. Not all Latinos are from Mexico, but they're still proud Latinos. And unfortunately, I found that throughout my whole career, not just in politics, after the 2019 legislative session, I went to work with the Department of Health and Human Services here in Nevada, specifically as a diversity outreach coordinator, someone who worked specifically on cultural competency and that messaging. And right now with the pandemic and when it comes to public health, there's a serious issue here. A lot of these folks don't know how to communicate to our people. And when they do, it comes off superficial, untrustworthy. We need to get better at having voices from our community that are trusted, and having those cities, those entities, the state, force them to be accountable and build those relationships. They can't. Yeah. Something I see constantly, when people bring me in for cultural competency assistance, right, as a consultant, one of the issues I see is like, well, we have this new amazing program, specifically targeting to helping low income or diverse communities, underserved, blah, 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 right? But no one's participating. I'm like, okay, but how did you reach out to them? What are you doing? What's the current structure of your program? Well, we put up flyers in the community center, and we did this little sign up thing here at the local whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, one, was it even in Spanish? Two, was the translation done correctly? Three, not everybody goes to this community center. If you're from the east side, you actually go to the one on Stewart. You do this, right? A lot of things like that. They basically do the same thing over and over, or like a half-ass effort. And then they say, well, clearly Latinos don't want to participate, I guess we have to shut down this program. I guess the majority of the people benefiting from this wonderful program we offer are all from the upper income neighborhoods, that's why the area code 89101, one of the most working class neighborhoods is struggling. We see that when it comes to pandemic, when it comes to education dollars, when it comes to all these things. Rob, how do you feel about like normal folks? Because you and I, we could get into our little story of how we met a little later, but You and I, we both approach things differently. But I've always had a tremendous respect for you because you come from a different perspective. I feel like you're kind of more of an artist. You're an everyday man, but kind of with the creative edge. How do you get more folks like you to get involved in the Crestwood Tree Project or just in politics in general?
Well, it's not easy, but we've done a lot of outreach, and it's a lot of knocking on doors, to be honest, to get people, especially with our Crestwood project. We've had to just, and not just once, but look, I live in the neighborhood, so I can just walk around, and if I see people out, I'll say, hey, how you doing? I'll give them a flyer. We're doing this thing if you want to help, or if we can use your yard, if we can, use your water hose, your power, stuff like that. So yeah, there is a lot of in person, and a lot of, Latino communities are very focused on family, and that's the biggest thing for them most of the time. Like, other concerns come after that. So we really have to, focus our efforts and kind of explain it in a way that this will help your family, this will help your kids, this will be healthier for, the whole family and everyone that in the neighborhood, really, and try to get to people to think about, which they already do, but to think about their community more as an extension of their family, and to really care about their neighbors and to care about their community. And I've found the most success just through talking to people and just getting to know people and them helping us spread the word. Social media also helps too. We have an Instagram, and so trying to reach out in various different ways has helped us. And word of mouth has been great for us. So
yeah, because you're actually building that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just throwing flyers out there. You're going, hey, neighbor, I'm from here. I care. This is our other neighbors. This will benefit you and your family. I love that.
Yeah.
I hope you run for office one day. I've been pushing it more and more, folks, into the political end. Seta, I'm really excited to have you on, too, because I think it's really important to have that communication piece, right? That's why so many folks are like, we want diversity. How come more aren't coming in? And they hire consultants from D.C. or whatever that have no connection to our community and don't know how to talk to us in a way that we respond to. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the 702 kickback and kind of a little bit more about the story with that and what you're doing in the community to spread the word and build that sense of community on the east side.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's how it starts, right? So the Kickback 702 is a podcast that was birthed during COVID, the beginning of COVID last year. And it was when everything was shutting down. We weren't communicating the way we wanted to or we used to because everybody had to kind of stay in place, right? And that's kind of where it started because my wife and I have 8 kids. The majority of them are grown and living on their own, so we didn't get to see them. And podcasting, I mean, let's face it, this is how everybody's communicating now, right? We realize that there is a generational gap between the older generation and the younger generation. And there's a lot of information that needs to be shared between generations, and it's not happening. So that was one of the reasons why we started the Kickback 702. And just like the title says, it's a kickback setting. It's not formal, even though we've had formal people on. It's a conversation between, tios and just family, just how you would just chop it up and talk about subjects that are relevant, but that we typically don't talk about. So the reason why we created it was also to get the word out, education and sharing. We've talked about trauma and addictions, divorce, buying your first home, civic engagement, all kinds of topics. We've had a couple people in the community that have passed away, and we've brought family members on to talk about it and help them fundraise, because that's one of the saddest things I've ever seen is you lose someone and you don't even get an opportunity to grieve your loss, the loss of your loved one, because you're out there washing cars, trying to raise funds. So these kind of topics are what's real in our community, and we wanted to engage those that are sometimes disenfranchised and disengaged, right? Because they might not fit the mold or the profile of what a typical person might be. So we wanted to get to the community, wanted to get to where the need was, and communicate and have this engagement with them, right? And it's been very successful. We've had people reach out to us that are younger than us. I'm 50 years old. My brother and my other co-hosts are in the same age range. So we wanted to make sure we're connecting with the generation that's coming up, the rising generation, who's actually going to be leading our communities, our companies. That's what we want, is for them to be equipped to do what we want them or need them to do. But a lot of times, one of the things I've seen working in government is they call it the silver tsunami, all the baby boomers that are retiring, and they're taking all their institutional knowledge with them, and they're not necessarily sharing them with the millennials that are coming in, because there's no, they don't communicate. They got different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And there's such a loss of information, not just in business, but in the community and amongst families, because we're not sharing. So that's one of the reasons why we started the podcast, and it's been very successful.
Damn, Sarah, you are deep, sir. Maybe I could learn some podcasting from you. But you touched on something that I think is really, really important. And part of the reason why I started the podcast, porque Latinos Unidos, cuando empezamos en el 2018, nuestra organización siempre tuvo eventos en persona. Y eso es lo que nos dio éxito, ¿verdad? Porque no nada más era algo formal, como tú estabas diciendo. Era no un kickback necesariamente, pero yo la llamaba un mixer. Y en los mixers todos, tuvimos algo de tomar, no necesariamente alcohol, pero sodas, agua. Y siempre era un negocio latino. We always tried to support minority-owned business. Latino, de la comunidad, afroamericano. Y en esos eventos no nada más estamos promoviendo un negocio local. No nada más estamos dando un lugar donde todos se pueden juntar, pero estamos compartiendo información.
Networking.
Yeah, so every episode or every, event that we had prior to COVID was like, we touched on a specific issue. I invited people from different areas of the community to talk specifically to us, and it was welcoming. It wouldn't be like, your average working class person doesn't feel left out with all the terms. It was chill, super chill.
That's awesome.
Super chill. So that's why I'm doing the podcast now, porque no podemos reunir juntos. We don't have that, like you said, Rob, it's really important in the Latino community to come together. That door knocking is pivotal. It's pivotal. You got to build that community, build that relationship. You can't just say we care. You got to show you care and stay there, not just come and then disappear and come back when you want something. So I want to ask both of you gentlemen, from your different areas of experience, you in the downtown community that's so active and together, Huntridge/Crestwood, and then you through your work in government as well as with the podcast. How do we build a better sense of unity in our community? How do we build a better sense of us, working and supporting each other? Do you have any ideas on that, or something you see that we are lacking, or an infrastructure we can build?
Definitely. Inclusion. So we have a habit of those that have been here longer and they have no accent, speak the language, have a decent job, maybe a little education, to kind of look down on those that are just getting here, right? That are 5 years into their migration to the States. And every racial group does it. The ones that have made it, that supposedly have made it, right? So they have a sense of, I'm up here, and then those that are just starting out or down here, there's a disconnect. And in reality, these that are up here are the business owners, the people that are running for politics, the elected officials that need the people down here. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you come around when you need something, but in reality, there shouldn't be a division. And this goes beyond race. It goes beyond Latinos and African Americans. In society, things would be better if we were more inclusive and less, we kind of do it to ourselves, like, oh, he doesn't speak Spanish, he's not a real Latino. Like, who am I to judge that, right?
Right.
I'm learning, all right?
But we do, but we do that though, man, and it's not right because we're excluding, we're not being inclusive. And then when we want their vote or we want their support or we want them to, patronize our businesses, then you're cool. You're Latino now, right? But I think we need to work ourselves as individuals, work on being inclusive and not exclusive. For political, you might be of a different political party, or you don't speak the language, or you're a light-skinned Latino and not necessarily a, whatever. So we find things to exclude people instead of including. And I think it starts there. The unity starts there. Because I feel when somebody looks at me a different way. Like, I've worked in government, like, for most of my adult life. There's still people that don't know me. Like, if they'll come to City Hall and visit, they'll look at me like, is he the maintenance guy or, who is that guy? They don't realize like, yeah, I got a little juice around here. I've been around. I got respect, right?
Yeah.
And then they get to know me and it's different. But we tend to stereotype people and we exclude instead of include. I mean, it's a kind of in our nature, and it's one of those things that divides us more. And that unity that you're talking about, it needs to start with ourselves, the way we conduct ourselves in our home and then in our workplace, our circles of influence. How do we move around,
Yes. Oh my God. Hell yes. So Rob, I think this is a great question for you as well, because, you've been doing a lot more, and it's been so exciting for me to see your growth, on top of just working at Zappos and kicking ass on the job, right? But outside of that, building a sense of community in your free time now. That's real community organizing. So tell us a little bit more about that and kind of what you see are some ways we can improve or grow upon that.
Well, I mean, I found that we are able to create more community just by working on things together as a group. And really, we need as many people as we can to get involved in the stuff that we're doing and to help us, with their hands and with their work like I think we need to do that more, really, reach out to people, not just for their support and for, but for them to actually have a say in what we're doing and for them to be important and to actually go and do projects with people and have people get together and get to know each other. And I think that's where the real, meat and potatoes is of building community, is having people get to know each other and rely on each other. And once you start doing that, you'll realize that these differences that we have, whatever they may be, aren't really all that important, really. Once once you start to get together with people and work on a goal that you can all achieve together, you find that those slight differences that you have with other people for whatever reason are really not that important.
Start to fade.
Yeah.
Straight up, man. So I wanted to ask both of you gentlemen. So obviously every community has their needs, and not just Clark County, the Vegas community, the Latino community of Vegas, all these little subsections, like you said, that we divide ourselves on, when really, if we were as a collective working together, we get so much more done. What can we do to improve that, you guys? What can we do besides just building that sense of community? What are maybe the top 2-3 issues you've seen from your neighbors, your friends, your family, that would motivate them to get involved that we're not currently touching on? When it comes to city council races, for example, some of those, we elect those people with only like 1,000 something votes because not enough people are voting in the first place. So who makes those decisions? The people with time and privilege. And the working class folks were like, well, they didn't bother reaching out to me, so why should I give a shit? Well, you should, because they're the ones allocating dollars, doing these things. How can we close that gap? Is there a couple issues you feel that these folks should touch on that can motivate folks to come out?
Honestly, it's just that getting that information out there. The podcast, we started to share that information. There's a local radio station that caters to the African-American community, and I've been listening to that radio station since I was a little kid, elementary school, and they do a lot of great work in the community because there's so many talk shows that share information and pass information, and it's given and received amongst community, right? It's a source that you trust. So we're trying to do that with the podcast, and whenever I see a new podcast that comes on, I love it. I encourage it because you need to get the word out. You need to be able to communicate the information. For me, it's all about inclusion. I think sometimes we don't value people the way we should. And I think everybody has something to contribute, being able to build community, get the word out, get people involved in local government. You just have to make sure you engage people. And it starts the model you guys are using, grassroots. You start with your family, and then with your neighbor, and then with your street, your block, your community. That's how you do it. It's always been done that way. Mm-hmm. I think that like when Olivia Diaz won in Ward 3, there was a margin of 75, 76 votes between the runner-up, and a total votes for that ward were like 3,000 votes, which is insane because there's over 100,000 residents in Ward 3. And almost 70% are Hispanic. So, I mean, that's, I mean, just think of the numbers and the math. Who's really getting out to vote?
Yeah, on our last episode, Fernando Romero was talking about that, we make up about 35% of the population, and our representation does not equate that anywhere near it.
On any level.
Right. So, Rob, is there any issues in particular that you feel that we could, because you and I talk about this all the time. What are a couple issues that you feel that, progressives can start using to motivate people to get involved, not just to bitch about stuff online, but actually do something about it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this is my own politics, but I'm obviously a big fan of Bernie Sanders, AOC, stuff like that. And I think that the reason that they're so successful at that, of getting people involved in their campaigns, volunteering, going out there and talking to neighbors and friends, is because the issues that they touch on are really base level issues, especially for Hispanic people and people of color and poor people in general. So I think just really pressing on some of those issues that are a little bit more, they appeal to a wider set. They can help more people, basically. If we build a good train network across the United States, if we build the things that we can do as a country and as a city and as a society, if we build more bike lanes throughout Las Vegas, stuff like that, even, it helps poor people a lot more. Like some issues are just more relevant, I think, to the needs of everyday people. So
right.
I think that's one way to do it.
Yeah, focusing more on those everyday needs. So that kind of reminds me, so while Latinos Unidos was doing a debrief of the 2020 election, it really fed into a lot of the things we've been screaming at the consultants and people the whole time, like, yo, you need to address this. One of the most stark things that came out of that was, of the top 5 issues in the 2020 election, for Latinos in particular and working class folks, not a single one of them was immigration. Not a single one.
Crazy, isn't it?
That was number 6. So what we need to get better at doing is doing issues that and addressing issues and spreading issues and being bold about it, not just like these canned statements on issues that affect people. And you're absolutely right, Rob. So the issues that were the top issues were economic issues, so the minimum wage, health care, because our community is number 1 impacted by COVID. But even prior to that, access to health care is something that affects poor people out of everybody. It kind of goes even to the homelessness crisis that we're having across the country, but here in Vegas as well, right? Is, people growing up, I remember it was like, oh, ese mendigo, they're lazy, especially from the Latino community. Unfortunately, sometimes we fall prey to some of those conservative narratives. Well, we come here, we don't know the language, we bust our ass, we made it work, and look at us now.
Got 3 jobs.
Yeah, right. And how come that guy's homeless? But now, what we've seen in the last 20 years or so is people, they're one healthcare incident away from losing everything. And usually what happens, how most people fall into homelessness in this country now, is like a series of poor events, right? You lose your job, which means you lose your healthcare benefits. And if you're someone with chronic illness, which many people in this country are, you are effed, my friend, totally effed. And then from there, you lose your house. You lose it all within the span of like 3-4 months, and you're homeless. Someone who's totally fine. So I think it's really important we address a lot of that stuff.
Even homelessness, we don't think of it as a Latino issue, but there's a lot of hidden homeless people. I know people that, they live in their cars, or they live on somebody's couch, or, they may not be on the street, but they don't have a home, and it's a lot more common than we'd like to think it is, So there are all these issues do affect Latino people. We just may not see it as much, but it is there. Yeah.
Affordable housing is a huge crisis here in Nevada. Maybe we should. I'm looking forward to finding an expert to talk on that, because I think that there's so many facets to that issue. But you touched on van life, quote, hashtag van life. It scares me, because we're kind of to the point now where we're glorifying and trying to normalize, like, yo, I don't want to live I don't want to be tied down somewhere to an expensive rental when I could just have the freedom of van life, and they make it look all glorious. And it's like, yo, homie, you're homeless. Yeah. You're homeless. You're homeless. And it's wonderful to have freedom and stuff, but it scares me that so many people my age are literally like that's their only option. So said, at the state and local level, is there anything we can do, or some of the things that you've been seeing on that front when it comes to homelessness and scarcity in our community?
It's funny you mentioned that. That's one of my projects at City of North Las Vegas is create the homeless initiative for North Las Vegas. Recently, North Las Vegas court, they call it the care court. They hired a new judge, Judge Chris Lee, and they have a court specifically for individuals that are homeless or at risk of being homeless that have warrants or have legal issues and we're talking like traffic tickets, obviously something that would be addressed in a municipal court level. And the idea is to help them remove those barriers so that they can get work, so that they can go to work. And one of the things the care court is doing is that they're also bringing wraparound services to help these individuals, right? The cool thing about that is that North Las Vegas just reopened their jail again, and now it's called the Community Correctional Center. Again, community, because they're also focusing on bringing wraparound services to at-risk or homeless individuals, because we all know that there's a lot in municipal jails. There's a lot of homeless people that are getting arrested for trespassing, for vagrancy, for minor issues. But what you're doing is you're racking up fines on these individuals that it's not really going to help them, right? So the idea is to get them the help they need, whether it's addiction, recovery, mental health, job training, things like that. So that's what we're trying to do, is to help individuals remove barriers. We're also creating an outreach team where we're going to go out and address them on the street with the needs that they have, address those needs to help them, not just give them food. I know a lot of times we want to help people on the street by giving them money or food, when in reality they need mental health, they need addiction, address their addictions. Sometimes they just need somebody to help them fill out their paperwork so that they can get their Social Security benefits, their veteran benefits, things like that. So it's just really getting down to where the problem is, identifying the barriers and removing the barriers, and how we can help as a community is being educated. We want to report the nuisance that we see, but we don't want to do anything to help, right? And how can we help? Do a little research, provide, donate, volunteer with those organizations that are helping with mental health, that are helping with these removal of barriers. I know downtown, I worked in downtown for a long time. Downtown has a big problem. And right where the borders are for City of Las Vegas and North Las Vegas on Owens, where all the services are at, that's where you see the majority of the migration of homeless individuals. And it's really sad to see, because those are our loved ones, those are our family, those are our neighbors, those are people that at some point were functioning members of society, and for whatever reason, a divorce, a mental breakdown, or you just stop taking your meds, and all of a sudden you're on the street.
Damn. That's very true, and it really touches on something that I think as a country we've been starting to have real conversations on, and that's really all the ways that we criminalize poverty. So many people, they're bad, this and that. And it's really, most of them, if you just gave them that one little leg up, like helping that fill out that paperwork, that veteran who served our country and then comes back and has to deal with this shit? What? I thought we were the country that loves our veterans, serve our country. We have a huge bloated DOD budget, and then these folks come back and none of that money is going to help them. We need more of those providers out there in the field.
It's sad to me. That's something I'm very passionate about. I've worked with Project 150 since they first started. I don't know if you're familiar with Project 150. They help homeless high school students and disadvantaged high school students. And it's sad to me how easily we create these disposable people, right? That they're not important. They're not important to us or the community because they're not contributing. They're actually a weight to the community. When in reality, that could be any of us at any given point. If I have a nervous breakdown, all of a sudden my retirement plan isn't going to help me because I no longer know who I am or who you are, and I end up on the street. All my years of putting into this retirement doesn't mean anything to me anymore or anybody. I all of a sudden start getting myself in trouble with the law because I'm doing stuff I shouldn't be doing, like using the restroom in public, things like that. I start getting warrants, start getting arrested. It can happen to anybody. And the thing is, when you find yourself in a situation like that, you have a lethal absence of hope. A lethal absence of hope. If you can kind of wrap your mind around what lethal absence of hope means, they don't give a damn if they live or die. They don't give a damn if somebody, puts a bullet in their head, like we've seen in our community. People take a bat to someone that's sleeping on the street as something fun to do some night, right? You're going to go kill a homeless person with a bat while they're sleeping. So we start to think of people as disposable, as, they don't contribute to society, so we don't care until it affects us, until it's something that we have to be forced to face when we could have, solved it. I mean, providing housing for an individual is like $20,000 a year. Putting somebody that's homeless in emergency medical, because they don't go to the doctors to get checkups. They go when it's an emergency.
Absolutely.
That's an emergency call. Housing them in jail, that's about $73,000 a year. So which is more feasible, $23,000 a year to house a homeless person, or $75,000 a year to put them through emergency, trauma centers and emergency rooms and jail them for a weekend and, all those other things we deal with,
Well, that's why there needs to be more of a connection. I feel like, unfortunately, some leaders, I remember a few years ago, actually, when I was working on some judicial campaigns, I went to like a builder's luncheon or something like that. And Carolyn Goodman was there. And clearly not a fan for various reasons. I mean, everybody can look up many of the horrible things she's done and why she sucks. But I had to call her out and make a question, which she clearly brushed off. But she was proudly boasting about how she was going to criminalize the homeless population, and all that in light of, we hear these narratives, unfortunately, when folks make it, there's that disconnect, like you said, like, well, what about my property values? Why should we host them? I work so hard, and they don't realize, like, if you did the math, this is much better for you, much better for your community, and you're helping people. But some people, there's this narrative, particularly in ultra-right conservatism, where it's like, well, if I'm suffering, you should suffer too. Why should you suffer less, right? People vote against their own best interest instead of helping someone. And unfortunately, there's lots of studies that have shown that on some of those things. Rob, do you have anything to add? Because I know, in particular, you've been very involved in your community, and that's one of the ones where there is quite a bit of homelessness.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of people in my community. We have people living in some of our alleys most of the time, and down Charleston is right there. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it is a choice that society makes, that these homeless people are there, that they exist even, but it is, it is, you could either choose to, have homeless, have a problem in your community, people who don't have a home and might resort to crime and might do all kinds of stuff, or you can help them, as a community and as a city and as a state, it really is a choice, that, and people need to realize that when they see it, crime happening, when they see homeless people on the street, we as a society have contributed to creating that problem. We could take care of that problem, and it wouldn't even be that. It would probably be less costly than having to deal with them, as you said, through the justice system and all kinds of other systems. It would be easier to just put them in housing, and cheaper. So I think we need to start looking at it that way. What do we want to do, A or B, instead of thinking that, it's this whole extra effort we need to do. It's not really. We're already doing a lot of this stuff, but it's up to us whether we want to actually, choose to help these people or choose to let them fend for themselves and see what happens,
So maybe you guys could help me with something, right? Because when folks are trying to do cultural competency messaging and improve, maybe you guys can offer your perspective. So how do we educate people, make them see the intersectionality of how all these things connect with each other, right? How do we reach out to people and make them understand that? Like, is there a way that we can explain, like you said, just breaking down the numbers, right? But is there anything else that like really would motivate people to understand, yes, homelessness is tied to this, is tied to that, is tied to infrastructure, is tied to redlining, is tied to urban planning, is tied to this, all of that goes together.
So here's the thing. That's a topic that's, how we say sometimes it's not a sexy project to take on. It's not something that on a political level people want to address because it scares away development, it scares away developers, it scares away business. But it's there. I mean, we all have to acknowledge it. We can't ignore it. And one of the things that we're doing, because this is a new program we're doing in North Las Vegas, is getting that message out there, getting some success stories out there. Somebody that was previously homeless, and just with the right support, the right guidance, now they're employed, now they're living in their own apartment, now they're progressing. See, because what happens is, if we want to build community, and I know the cities have these as slogans, build community, improve quality of life. You build community, you strengthen community by strengthening you and me. We're community, right? Community is not a building. Community is not a service. Community are the individuals that live in that area. That's community. So you want to improve community, you improve the quality of life of the people that live in the community. So one of the things we need to do is help the community change the narrative of what homelessness is. Homelessness could be somebody who just came down on their luck, someone that came back from one of the wars and has PTSD and can't function, can't keep a job. And now your wife divorced you because you have issues and from a war that I fought for you and this and that. So things that are so complicated that can be easily addressed. I think we need to change the narrative, help the community understand that this is our issue. This is one of our problems. How can we help now? We acknowledge it. Okay, how can we work on solutions now? So one of the things we want to do is help change the narrative in the community so that the community can understand, put a face to an individual. This is Maria, or this is John, or this is so-and-so. They were homeless, and through the right services and the right support, now they're a success story. You know what I mean? Kind of change that narrative a little bit so that people start to, instead of not wanting to look that way until it's a nuisance and we have to call code enforcement or PD or whatever, that we start, what can we do to help?
Don't look away, do something.
Do something.
Right.
Where can I volunteer? I don't want to necessarily give him $1, and I know he's going to add it to his $5 hit of whatever. That's not going to help him,
right.
But how can I help support organizations that are providing, substance abuse counseling, that are helping people with addictions, with medical conditions that they can't afford to take care of themselves? How can I help them? Do a little research. What services in the area help that kind of problem? And donate or contribute, So that's what I think.
And I think putting eyes on these issues too. That's why I like what you guys are doing with your podcasts, because you address these issues locally, and I think people are more and more making the choice, instead of listening to a podcast about, serial killer or whatever, there's all kinds of podcasts and TV shows and all kinds of stuff out there, but people are choosing more and more to look at local media and to see, really even in their neighborhoods and in their cities where they are. I think it's becoming more of an important thing, and it's more possible now. Anybody could do podcasts, anybody could do a little YouTube show,
Right.
So I think more and more people are starting to, instead of focusing on these, what kind of obscure things to my life or into our personal lives, things that actually matter. You can instead of spending your time on that, you can spend your time more locally and engaged in your community. And I think that's great, and the more eyes that we have on these problems, the more people we have talking about them, I think the better.
Right. There's this disassociation for many people, like, oh, that's a far away thing. Or, if you're focused on listening to national pundits all the time, you feel hopeless and pissed off at everybody, right? On the right and extreme right, you got this like literal outright propaganda, like crazy stuff. And then on the left, you also have these echo chambers too. And it's like, it can make you come off judgmental or whatever and stuff too. This isn't just some national issue. If you look at it from the state and local perspective, which, it's all about increasing access to resources, education, opportunities. And that's really how you address stuff. You demand stuff locally. And we're lucky in Nevada. You can literally, any of your state assembly people, state senators, you could call them up right now and be like, vote yes on blah, 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 or send an email or participate in the committee where they're voting on that bill online. Like, it's very easy, y'all. Yeah. So I'm really excited to have, folks like you doing stuff. I think it's so impressive what you've done with the 702 kickback, because it's just like some dudes chilling, talking, like I saw the episode where you were talking to Councilman Isaac Barron, one of my friends and mentors, someone who's always supported me in my career. thanks to him, actually, with the city of North Las Vegas, where my parents live proudly, I was the youngest Citizens Advisory Council person ever elected. I was 19 years old at the time, or 20, I believe. And then I got elected as the chair. And that's an allocation of like $400,000 that we're putting to nonprofits and groups like that, all because I was involved, all because I was seeking mentorship and assistance, and someone took a chance on me from my community to help. I got to give him credit. Almost everyone he ever appointed to boards and stuff was people from his district, from his ward, that were people of color that live in that ward, that represent and reflect that ward. You know, that's some dope ass shit. Yeah, it is. And on that note, I think you brought up something really good. So 88.1 is our local station here in Vegas, does wonderful stuff, all targeting the Black community, I believe grant funded, to give them equitable resources. And it's become a huge thing. Like people, they have the Urban Voice as well. And they're always talking about events for vaccines, events for how to vote. They actually had a really dope one. I got to plug. They had an event, Drop It Like It's Hot for your vote, where you drop off your ballot like it's hot. And they were doing drive-through voting at the election center in North Las Vegas on Cheyenne. And my mom and I were so excited on the first day of early voting. Of course we voted, you know, but it made me so happy to, like, you know, after in some cases maybe nagging some of my friends and stuff, but encouraging through the years, more and more people hit me up every year, like 30, 40, 50, 60 now. Like, who do I vote for? What's this? I don't know who the judges are. Yeah. And I make a little voter guide, you know, like, here's this one. And if you want to double check my resources, here's the voter guide for the League of Women Voters. Here's the voter guide for your union. Here's the voter guide. And if you compare all of these, they kind of match up and tell you who's for what, you know? Yeah. So Rob, tell me a little bit more about your experience getting more involved and stuff. Because you and I... we met and you started coming to Latinos Unidos events, and I was like, well, this guy, he's like a dope artist guy. And at my events, I'd have like spoken poetry and stuff like that sometimes, along with like a state senator come visit or something, to connect those things that people relate to. How did that kind of push you to start doing what you're doing? And were there other voices or things that motivated you to kind of start this Crestwood Tree Project?
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, I think what you did was you made it easy for people, right? You just, you know, just show up and, you know, we'll have a good time. We'll have some drinks, whatever, you know, have some food. And I think I did learn a lot from that, you know, because people do want to come out. They do want to help their community. But, you know, the people are busy, and you need to kind of work with them in order to make it easy for them and you know, just try and make it as smooth as possible. And yeah, so, you know, I'm still learning a lot, you know, about all this stuff.
We're all learning. We gotta keep learning.
Yeah. But, you know, I think one of the biggest things is to just try and, you know, make it so that it doesn't feel like it's such a challenge. It's like, you know, anything we're going to ask you to do, it's not going to be, you know, we just want your support and your help and to show up and that's it. You know?
Right. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things, help me, help you. Mm-hmm. So at our events, you know, you're learning something on the issue. You have different people talking about it from different perspectives. There's food, there's drinks, of course. And then there's a call to action. Now that you learned this and you know a lot more about this on the local level and what these various people are doing about it, here's what you can do. Just sign this petition, register to vote. Do that, you know, you make it easy for people to do it instead of putting all these damn hurdles and then saying, well, why don't they participate?
Back to what you said earlier, you know, about, you know, putting the information out. I remember years and years ago, there was a council person that in on the east side, Ward 3, that had me come over to a community meeting to help translate, right? Yeah. So I'm sitting there in the Rafael Rivera Center, and Councilman so-and-so and his liaison and myself are waiting for the community to show up, and I was going to translate. Nobody shows up. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, they finally call the meeting, and it's like, you know, councilperson said, and I don't want to say any names, but councilperson said, see, this is why I don't like doing this. They never show up. So by then I was already like pissed, right? So I'm like, so how did you guys advertise the meeting? Oh, we did flyers. Were they in Spanish? No, just English. Okay. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's why nobody's here. And then, well, we put it online. We put it on the city's website. I'm like, how many people here do you think have a computer? And then if they have a computer, have internet, right? So again, how are we engaging our community? How are we reaching our community? And is it fair for us to say, well, they didn't show up? Go knock on their door. Go to them, because at the end of the day, anything that's grant funded, anything that's allocated through a budget, if you don't use that budget, you don't use those grant funds, they're going to get taken away. And next year, guess what? You're not going to get it, right? So the idea is if somebody entrusts a grant fund for you or allocated some money in a budget for you, it's your responsibility at that level to make sure that you spend those funds, and not only spend the funds, but that you're able to report back what you did with those funds so that next year you get more funds.
I think a lot more, you touched on something that I think is really important. A lot of folks don't understand the grant process and some of those local things. Like even me, like I've been doing this forever. I'm a total nerd, and I know it gets on some people's nerves sometimes, but at least all my friends are more woke. And one of the things that really like blew me away, I think it was like my senior year at UNLV, was learning more about urban planning. Oh, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, there's like no Black and brown people doing urban planning. And that's how redlining persists. And that's how these developments get away with doing some of the things they do.
And I've seen so much of this working in municipal government, because I'm curious by nature, but I get to hear, and I get to see these projects. And you know, Tony Shea, I didn't realize you worked for Zappos.
I
used to.
Yeah.
He did so much for downtown Las Vegas because of his interest to redevelop downtown Las Vegas. So that was an individual that had nothing to do with politics. It was just somebody that had a vision and did it. Right. We don't have millions, or we're not billionaires, but we can have a similar impact by just choosing to do something, investing time and resources don't always mean money, right? So we can invest time and resources to a project in our community, and then just engage, because it's something that you share. I call it the conversion process. So I have a vision of doing this for this park, and I'm passionate about it because X, Y, and Z. I share it with you with passion. You feel it and you receive it. Now you're converted to my vision, and now it's our vision. And then the two of us share it with Rob, and now it's three that have the same vision and passion. Then we share it with the next person. Next thing you know, we have 10 people that are very passionate and have the same vision to accomplish the same goal. Guess what? It's going to happen. You know, and that's how every project starts. You share that with the right person, doors open up. People want to make sure that things happen. They don't necessarily want to do them, but they'll support them.
Right. I think that's a really good point, you know? And that kind of brings me to my last thing, is one of the tenets of Latinos Unidos is building and empowering our community through entrepreneurship. You know, I think a lot of missed opportunity in the Latino community because we're so boxed into certain issues or things, and still divided even amongst ourselves, right? Because so many so many people are so focused on just trying to survive. They're like, I don't got time for that, homie. We really need to get more folks in on this. We need to get more folks involved, and we need to get more folks supporting each other. And that brings us to entrepreneurship, right? There's so many local Latino-owned businesses. And I don't just mean food trucks, people. I mean, there's mercados, there's clothing stores, there's all kinds of stuff, you know, even the swap meet, you know, that's a great way people with no money can really get started in their business and get a following to eventually buy and own or rent their little shop. How can we get better? Just like 88.1 uses that to promote Black businesses, Black opportunities, Black engagement. How can we as a Latino community get better at empowering and supporting each other, especially when it comes to business? Because when you empower yourself economically, you empower yourself in every other way of your life, honestly. So do you guys have any feedback on that?
Yeah. So I think Latino culture it's a natural fit for entrepreneurship. I see so many, you know, I have the elote lady on my street. I have the person selling fruit, you know, honking the horn with oranges in the back. So I think it's such a natural thing. Swap meets as well. It's kind of part of Latino culture that people are selling their own products, starting their own businesses. And I think we just need to kind of promote education in that, really, you know, get people to know this is what you legally need to do. And you know, just kind of let people know that this, you know, this is normal. And that I think really high school classes, there should be more high school classes about opening your own business. And college, it should be almost any person who goes to college should be almost required to take a few, especially now, classes on how to make your own LLC or how to create your own little company, basically. I think it's already kind of part of our natural how we do things, but we should make it a little more, just get more education out there to help people.
That knowledge barrier you were bringing up. So do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, you have the chambers, right? The Latin Chamber of Commerce. You have your city government that does the licensing, business licensing. And back to what he's saying, compliance. You want people to be able to grow a business and to be able to grow a business or your side hustle. We all got hustles, right? I grew up hustling my whole life. So it's nature to us. You have a side hustle, but
Right.
if you want to grow that to the next level, you do need a little education, a little background, and not necessarily education as a degree, but how do I get a business license? How do I get my tax ID number? How do I do marketing? Sometimes we just word of mouth with a little horn, like the paletero or whatever, but we want to take it to the next level. So a micro incubator, for business. I know, Ward 5, City of Las Vegas has one. They've had this concept throughout the country where you have incubators where you help people not only start their business, but you walk them through the workshops. You do micro loans, where you have an entrepreneur that's already made it and wants to give back. You provide micro loans to people to help them grow their business. But part of the catch for me to give you some funds, you got to go through these classes. You got to go through these workshops, right? Because at the end of the day, again, community is going to increase, and we're going to better community by bettering the quality of life of the individual. Because now it's going to be generational. Now I can afford to put my kids through college. Now I can afford to be a part of society. Now I can afford to do this, and that. And instead of the poverty, the cycle of poverty that we're going to pass on to our kids, the bad financial habits that we have, or financial literacy, those kind of things that we can't pass on to our generations. Now we start changing generational cycles, and we become more inclusive in society, where we're not kind of just, we kind of just shelter ourselves where we feel comfortable amongst people that we feel comfortable amongst.
Right.
We don't want to sit at the table because we don't know how to act at the table. We don't want just a seat at the table. We want to know how to act when we're at the table.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's something that we all need to grow on. In our last episode with my new mentee and one of our other community leaders through HIP, we were talking about the need to improve education and the need, how that gap of information with the silver tsunami disappearing, they're taking all their information with them and not exchanging that because of that age divide. So I look forward to hearing more about maybe some of the services and things we could grow upon, not just in the city of North Las Vegas, but here in the east side and just throughout our whole Vegas Valley community. But I really thank both of you guys for coming on, and I look forward to seeing how we can move forward from here. I think everything we addressed today has been super exciting to me because our first couple episodes have been more so things in a larger scope, from different perspectives, but talking about things here local, I think that's going to connect with the folks more than anything. So by the time this episode premieres, I'm going to have an announcement about a special event and thing that we're going to be working on. But I look forward to having both of you participate in that and coming on to the show in the future. So thank you both, gentlemen. Sarah, Rob, do you have any final words for our folks at home?
No, just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to come, hang out with you guys and talk, get to know you, Rob. Hopefully this isn't the last time we have a conversation. And just to the people out there, you can make a difference. You can make a difference. You don't have to have a title, work for a certain organization. You can make a difference, and it's contagious. You start in your home, start with your family, start with your small circle of influence, and it's contagious. You set the tone, you set the example, you create the community you want to live in. Don't wait for anybody to do it for you. You do it.
Yeah, don't think somebody should do something about that. Be
Yeah.
like, hey, I am somebody.
Yes.
I can do something about that. So that's dope. And Rob, anything you want to say?
Yeah, just thank you, Jess, for having me on. This was great, and it was great to get to know you, Sarah. But yeah, just more. Obviously, we're planting trees in the neighborhood. I think that anybody who can help improve their neighborhood, you're not only doing it for yourself, obviously, but you're doing it for the whole community and really for the future. So we need to think about what we can do as a community to help not only the people who are living now, but the people who are going to be living 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you know? And I think that's a good way to really look at everything that we do in life and to kind of try and plan for what we want the world to look like.
Yeah, when you heal yourself, you heal your ancestors. When you build your community, you build the collective. So, quick plug for the Crestwood Tree Project. Can you tell us how often you guys meet? And we'll make sure folks know about that.
Yeah, we were planting trees every weekend. It's gotten a little too hot now, so we're probably going to try and do some nighttime events, maybe start at 5 or 6 and then plant a couple trees and then, you know, go till 9 o'clock or so. But yeah, if you want to look us up, we're at Crestwood Trees on Instagram, and you can find us there. And all of our events are going to be posted on there. If you need anything, feel free to DM me. I'm behind that account, and yeah, you know, we'll be out there.
Said I forgot. Can you give us the information for your podcast as well?
Yeah, if you want to check us out, just Google the Kickback 702 podcast. We are on Spotify, Google Podcast. Just check us out. We have about 35 episodes that we've archived, and we touch all kinds of different topics, just like what we're doing here, just having conversation. And we've had some pretty awesome guests, so check us out.
Thank you both. And thank you both for what you're doing for our community. So with that, gracias a todos por mirar este capítulo de Latinos Unidos. Thank you, everyone who's seen this episode of Latinos Unidos podcast. And until next time, cuídense. Take care of yourself.